Hey guys, welcome to 10 More Minutes. This is Sam, and here is your behind the scenes look at Game Grumps Animated. I'm just going to go over some of the basics of kind of what I did and how I kind of went about creating it. We're going to start off and go with the most original, which is Photoshop. So a couple months ago, Chris told me about a Game Grumps clip. I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I'd known for a long time that I wanted to create an animated one since back in the days when JonTron was doing it with Egoraptor. And I've been a fan of Egoraptor since I was in high school. I remember being shown his stuff probably my sophomore year by a friend of mine, and I've always thought his stuff was really funny and really interesting. So I've always had in the back of my head like, man, it'd be pretty cool to do an animated Game Grumps, especially since I haven't done an animation since I was in college. So it's been about, I don't know, 4 or 5 years since I've done a full animation and nothing of this caliber. But what you're seeing right now on the screen is just the basic sketch of what I want to do. I was just doing some setup and a little bit of layout on what I wanted to do. Before I even did this, I did a little bit of thumbnails on a piece of paper, which I evidently lost because I can't find it, otherwise I would show you guys, but it was even more scribbly than this. This is going to take us now next to the animatic phase, which is this. So what you guys were originally seeing, what you guys have seen is the nice cleaned up version. This is where it all kind of started. I just had the audio clip and that was kind of it. And then I kind of just went from there. Like, this is kind of like the most basic of basic. And there's not a whole lot going on. It's all just super basic designs, just trying to figure out the feel of what I want to do, kind of laying everything out. There's a lot of stuff that gets added in later, but this is all just kind of get a feeling, get an idea, and this is where it all starts flowing. This is like the groundwork for my animation. What we usually call this is the storyboard animatic phase, and that's just, like I said, to get things going, get some ideas, lay down my jokes. The Not Covered by Acts of God was something that Chris gave me. He remembers reading a manual when he was got his fridge, I believe it was, and there's a little thing in small text that said "Not Covered by Acts of God," and I just found that to be hilarious because I wanted to add something to that joke to make it a little bit better. But after I'd finished doing the animatic, which you guys have seen, which is just kind of like really simple stuff, like it's all just trying to get things where they're supposed to be, not really worrying about how accurate things are, but just making sure things are kind of readable and that I can kind of have an idea of where I want to go to next. But the next step took me a lot longer than I initially anticipated, and that was the character models. So when I was doing this, there's a lot more work that probably a lot of people don't end up seeing or won't even notice. But I always start with a sketch. I've always had this kind of old man character with a little bowler cap that I've drawn, I don't know, probably about 5 years now. And I've always thought he was just really funny, just with a mustache. So the first thing I started doing is I just started breaking down his turnaround, which is him in all these different angles with the sketch. I just kind of started off with some roughs just to kind of figure out, what he looks like. And all of this is still super rough. The only sketch you've seen of Miss Witherbee is that one from before. And then there's kind of a sketch here. I knew that I wanted to have a dog, so I went ahead and just made it a little bit more grounded, kind of based off a little bit of a beagle, have his upside down pose right there, and the little bird. From there, it just kind of came down to working on creating all the different parts for the different characters. So like, for instance, the bird, he's got a little bit of a shrug going on. I did a lot of test animations in this just to kind of figure it out. I hadn't done anything fully animated in a long time, so I wasn't really sure how I was going to go about it. I'd done work in Flash before, but just as a cleanup artist, so I'd created models for the animators to use, but never created models myself. So a lot of this was just learning how to kind of create all the different parts, because inside of this, everything is kind of like a movable part. Like, her face is movable. Let's get in here. Like, you can move her cheeks, you can move her eyeglasses. All this stuff is movable parts, and they all have different anchor points, which allow me to manipulate the animation. But as I was doing it, I knew you could do that. I didn't know how to do that. It'd been so long, and I never had an actual course on how to do Flash animation. Everything that I learned how to do in this was either just from tutorials or from just observing on the job when I was doing it. But there's a lot of different character models. I eventually had to go through and make sure everything lined up. And as you can see, he's got all these different positions. So when he flips around and turns in the animation, all that stuff is there. So like right up here, you can kind of see how he's turning around on each single layer. So having to draw all that was a little bit of a pain. And then I decided to do a 360 flip one. So that should be on this layer right here. And you can see like the sketch over the old man. Just barely. So all of this is like super rough. So you're just getting kind of the idea of what I want to do and then going from there. And then eventually comes the hard part, which is cleaning up. This whole process of cleaning up and doing all the different revisions and then making all the different parts, like the help wanted sign and the explosion stuff, along with the propane tank and the leaves, all that stuff took a long time to do. And even just doing, eventually I had animated the flip, and that was something all of its own. So we're going to go over and look at one of the first iterations of it. As you can see, I have tons of different layers going on around here. There's just so much stuff happening, and usually I had a bunch of my parts down here in the bottom. You can see the flip all like put outside, just step by step by step, seeing what it takes for it all to flip. And this is without the fire and the smoke behind it too, which I added much later. A lot of the stuff, like if an animator is doing his job, you don't notice the little things. It's when things are absent, or like when it's a Henry Cavill mustache, you know when things are kind of off. It's your job to make sure that it's believable. So as you're looking through this, there's a lot of animation that's not really going on. It's all super rough. This is about like the first phase when I was doing it. I hadn't added anything environmental. I hadn't done really a lot of stuff to it. I knew what I wanted to do, but I didn't know how I was going to go about doing it. A lot of this stuff was just throwing things in, doing different changes. I'm surprised that this version is as far as it is too. But as you can see, like there's almost nothing going on in a lot of these scenes. Some of it, there's not even stuff happening. And then we kind of get towards the end. It's just got its basic animations. I figured out a little bit of the stuff. But then if we jump ahead to kind of like version 29, I ended up doing like 38 versions. You can see a lot more of the animation kind of going on, how like the lip syncing happens. That was incredibly difficult because I hadn't done that before. So figuring out lip movements, I think I can pull it up right now. This is where I try and name all my stuff in order. I learned this when I was working at GhostBot, to kind of label all of your stuff when you're working, because it just really helps. Like everything in here is like, if it's the old man, it's O_. If it's the grandma, it's G_, etc., etc. And that just kind of helps me keep everything in order. Yet it still doesn't help me because I cannot find my mouths. Where are you, mouths? There you are. So one of the cool things in Flash is like I had to figure out all the different vowels and syllables, so I made different mouths for each one going through. And that made it a little bit easier when I was doing the mouths. But as you can see, like there are just tons of parts all over the place. All these characters too are broken down into multiple segments, which allows me to manipulate and animate them as I see fit. Like you can go into this one and you can just see the timeline. Like there's all these different little subtle things that are happening. Like his arms moving up, he's scratching while the bird is going to. I had to learn about doing animations within animations. Like as you can see, there's a lot of stuff. Like each arm is on a different layer. I had to get really good later on as I was doing this to make sure everything was in order. Similar to when I'm doing Photoshop, I need to know what my layers are, so if I need to change something, I can do it. Let's go back and check version like 16, and you guys can see kind of how different it is, like in that almost in-between phase. So as you can see, probably still even in this segment, there's a lot of stuff that's still there. Like I'd figured out how to do the leaves animation, and I think this is right before I had decided to do like the environmental destruction, which was Chris's idea. But even back here, like the intro has the same idea, but it's not exactly the same. The heads animate on a different function. The logo's different. But a lot of the stuff hadn't been figured out, like the mountains in the background haven't been added. If you look at the environment, it doesn't deteriorate like it does. There's no hedging, no fencing behind that. So there's a lot of stuff that isn't, like there's the puddle that goes with the dog as he flies up. There's a lot of subtle animations I don't think that are in here at this point, including like when the dog is scratching and just, little things that add more believability to it. After that, I kind of went into After Effects. There was still stuff for me to do on that end as well. So luckily, once I got into After Effects, it really wasn't too difficult. Doing the animation took my entire spring break when I had it because I wasn't teaching. Took my entire spring break, and then about a month after, I'd say doing the animation itself took about a month and a half. And then just all the other stuff with editing and being sick and doing all these library appearances, I hadn't had a lot of time to finish this, so it's been a little bit on the back burner. This is After Effects. I had a little bit more experience working in this program, but one of the main things that I wanted to do with After Effects, and put this to half, was just add little things like film grain, make sure there's like little blurs going on when he's coming in and out of the intros, just little tweaks here and there, just to add a little bit more flavor to it. I didn't want to do the sound mixing until after, because I remembered, oh yeah, Premiere Pro is a bit better for that. So just even like with segments like here, there's like little areas where I had highlights and flashes, like where it gets a little bit brighter right there. That's not in the original animation. Just adding little touches like that along with the film grain and watching it load and take forever is just another part and parcel. Adding the 10 seconds later, which is obviously a nod to SpongeBob. Adding that little bit of motion blur when it transitions right here. Oh, maybe it's not there. And you'll miss it if you don't see it. Oh, and yeah, there's gone. There's really just super subtle touches. Adding some spotlights. There's different things I did, like I added the spotlight for when the halo comes down and he's a ghost. Just adding some different filters and stuff of that nature, little things to overemphasize certain segments, like when he's looking at the map, I darkened some segments a little bit darker, just to give it a little bit more emphasis. Here's the sound mix where I did all the different sounds, made some sound effects on my own with just Windows Audio. Like the dog reaction, you probably never hear it, but it's just me making a yelp sound. There's a lot of little funny things. That's been your behind the scenes look at Game Grumps Animated. I hope this has been a little bit informative or just a little bit fun to see a little bit of what my desktop looks like and some of the other things. If you guys would like more videos on how I go about art, please comment below and let me know, and then I'd be happy to kind of give you guys a tutorial on whatever you guys are interested in and share some of my vast knowledge. Beep, bop,